Any questions for Eddie?
The highs and lows of publishing, self-publishing for you?
So going back to Ex Libris, so as I was explaining, talking with Brother Corky, Brother Hilton. So when I got into it, it was very interesting to see how we found our way to them differently. I think I tried the traditional publishing route as far as a query letter or something maybe once, and somewhere in there, I don't know, I just knew that I needed to go at it on my own. So I, researched the different companies. Somehow Ex Libris stood out more so than anybody else. And from what I honestly, and that's just actually a question I was going to ask the other guys, the other brothers there did the same thing. With my undergrad in English, my master's in creative writing, there was a lot of focus on the publishing world. There was a lot of talk about what was called a vanity press. Somebody that will publish anything that you give them money to publish. And so there was always a sense of a lack of credibility because, oh, well, I just gave you money and you turned it into a book kind of thing. And so I had some reservations about going with them, but then, I decided to go with them. I looked at everything that they were doing. I just, over the years, to be honest, I just was divine order. People were put in my life that just happened to mention this is how copyright works, this is how this works. And so I kind of knew what they were doing. But my experience with them as I went through all of that with them, especially the back and forth with the editing and that whole process, and from what I recall, they would send the document back. And if you remember Word documents where you have those comments in the corner, so I had one person that was writing in pink for like the technical, grammatical, the typos, that sort of thing. And then you had like the fact checker. Are you sure this is the street name? Are you sure this is the whatever? And so by the time I got through that whole process and knowing what I understood, the main function, as I understand it, for the publisher is you finance the project, you orchestrate the whole thing. What are the covers going to look like? I don't know if you went through obviously you went through the similar process where I actually went outside of the company to do my own cover, found the photographers, found the models, long story short. But somewhere in there I said, well, if the publisher pays for everything and the publisher directs everything, this is exactly what they say when I looked at them in 2011, a self-publishing service. They're not the publisher. I am the publisher, so now I have my company. I did the 2 books with them, and and over the course of time, and I'm sure you can probably say the same, you start looking at what you paid, and that wasn't worth what I paid. I'm not getting everything that I paid out. And then to think about where I was at the time that I was working on these 2 books, I was quite literally working the 9 to 5, teaching adjunct online, and then working on the writing. So my days were roughly 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. I looked at all of that and I said, well, in this sense, I've always been a person that would pay a little bit more for convenience, But now that I've walked away from, I quite really did again, walk away from the 9 to 5 world again, and I have the time, I am the one that's doing the copyright. I am the one that's getting the barcodes and the ISBN numbers. I am the one that is getting in touch with the person that's going to do the ebook conversion. As I mentioned to another brother, I am the person that researched, here's another service, and basically it's just a printing service at this point, that will make this physical product that looks just like anything else that you would find at Barnes & Noble, Borders when they were here, that sort of thing. So now I'm in a place where I'm severing that relationship with Ex Libris, actually going back to, because I do still unfortunately have their imprint on there, going back to reprint everything and totally remove them from the process. It has been a learning experience. It was gratifying because for me, talking to a lot of other writers, some of them, and it's very valid, they only want to write, and I understand that, wanting to just be the author. I, however, wanted, the best example I can think of in my head right now, Jay-Z, I wanted to control the whole aspect of it. I want to not just get the royalties, I want to pull in as much of the royalties as I can, being the publisher. So I want to control all of it. Not necessarily do all of it, I'm going to pull in the experts that can do, the different aspects. But me being me, I don't believe in regret. And I've done enough things that it's very tempting to think of regret. I think in the sense of divine order, I think in the sense of, okay, here's an experience experience you had, it might have been a mistake. What did you learn from it? If you learned from it, it was not a mistake. So that process taught me how to go about this, where I can, you know, be more judicious in the spending of my own funds, and at the same time keep the creative control. And so I was very interested and curious to hear that you guys actually had the kind of battle, because when the documents came back to me, I quite literally went to the document, nope, we're not changing that, we're changing this, we're not changing that, shot it back, and it came back the way I said it should come back. So, but this was 2011, so I don't know what has changed since then. Oh, earlier than that. Okay. Ooh, wow. Okay. But yeah, so long answer, sorry.
Can you tell us something about you do have a primary character that's in every one of your books, right?
Yes, so the series started with the character Seron. That's actually my middle name. He's actually inspired largely by me, very similar to what you described. There is a element of reality, but a lot of poetic license. Not trying to get sued, not trying to lose my friends, not trying to think. And so he was the central character of the first book. And what happened with the first book, and actually turned into these other stories, several people would ask, well, what about Lee? What about, who's this one? What about Calvin? What about Cherie? What about, and knowing the terms, I would say, well, they were a plot device. I just needed them to get Seron to the end of the book. They weren't really, the star. But it turned into me listening to their questions and me actually saying, well, now I want to know who the character is. So each story has a different central character, but they're all, if you think back to Elin Harris's Invisible Life in that whole series, you have Raymond, you have Basil, you have the different characters, and they weave in and out, but they take turns being the central character. So that's kind of what's going on with my series.
Where does the story take place and why?
The first took place primarily in Chicago. The central character is actually had relocated. Is very interesting. I find that my life imitates my art, but my art imitates my life. I wrote this so many years back, and now I have quite literally moved across the country to Dallas. I didn't go to Vegas, but the central character in the first book, he's from Chicago. He moves to Las Vegas. He finds out that an ex-lover who's still a friend is passing away, so the majority of the story actually takes place in Chicago. You see him get on the plane to come to Chicago. The second book is primarily Las Vegas. I kind of tried to do a different locale each time. I felt like it was kind of cheating, a little too easy to just write about Chicago. It was awesome to see that a lot of people, and it was what I intended with the first book especially, I wanted the city to be a character, and a lot of people did respond to say that yes, I see the pulse of the city, I see the life and the vibrancy of the city, I see the quote-unquote underbelly of the city. I basically right now am part of the whole thing of moving to Dallas and actually the plan to kind of move around, kind of want to do around the world in 80 years kind of thing. I want to experience these other cities, these other locales, so that they will inform my writing, and then I can change that setting and be more authentic. I found myself in a couple of places, to be honest, doing a Google search about, or I would reach out to friends in Las Vegas. Okay, I need a just like we can talk about Harold's Chicken here. Something that is Chicago, something that is specific to this locale, that if you are not from here, if you have not visited, in this case Vegas, give me that detail. And so that's what I've been trying to put in the books, and I've been able to supplement it with some of my own travel. But yeah, so right now, I think with the most recent story, that one is in Las Vegas. The one that's coming up, actually, yeah, I want to say this whole mini-series, because all of the characters are kind of in Las Vegas at that point, so it's kind of taking place in Las Vegas. But the first book was heavy Chicago.
Great. Thank you.
Can you talk about the overt sexual?
Oh.
Why so much sex?
Okay. It was partially born out of the first book. The first book I felt was pretty chaste, pretty innocent, and it fit that character. That was the character that was very self-loathing, internalized homophobia, couldn't reconcile spirituality and sexuality, so he wouldn't use certain terms, he wouldn't be as overt, with the sex. And the character of Lee, to be quite honest, is in that book. And he's only there for a snapshot. He's really not there long, but you do get that he is very much the way that I kind of described it in the reading. He's that very hyper, quote unquote, masculine guy, and he's the one that is, doing all the, having sex and everything, and as it's implied even in the reading that I did, and I was trying not to give away too much of the story, but he's that typical character that has had his heart broken and is doing everything he can not to have that experience again. So he's running, and his form of running is hopping in and out of these beds before someone can make a connection, before I can make a connection. I'm gonna female, male, as much as I can, possibly do. And so, looking at the cover, we always talk about judging the book by its cover and that sort of thing. I wanted all of it to be very reflective of this character's mindset. What is he looking at? What is he looking for? What is he experiencing? What energy is he giving off? Even to the point that the first cover was designed by a female friend of mine, and this I specifically went for a male graphic artist because I felt that he pull out that male energy that I wanted. And so it's very, very sexual on purpose. It's kind of the old adage of hiding the medicine in the ice cream kind of thing, because the sex will get you to the book, and while you're there, here's your message.
I'm just wondering, now that she's asked about the sexual part, so James Baldwin always intermingled religion and sex, and he could actually never resolve the characters were never able to really resolve their sexuality with their religious or spiritual aims or goals. How do your characters deal with? So I just moved back to Chicago, and so I left the church a long time ago, and I'm finding that I'm meeting people, black men, women, who are gay, lesbian, or transgendered even, and they're very much involved with the church. They're like in the choir, on the usher board. I mean, it's a part of their life. They've integrated it. How does your character deal with religion, spirituality, sexuality in his life or in their lives? Do they?
Yeah, actually, just to try to keep the answers shorter. In the case of Lee, he's the one that is, I'm just not organized religion. I am not going to your church. I think I quite literally have him say somewhere in there that I'm not going to pay my tithes for you to express ship me to hell, kind of thing. But he has his kind of Sunday routine. He has his music of love and inspiration going in the background, and he has his Joel Osteen playing in the background. He's thinking about the people that he loves, and thinking about God as love. He's having that communion on his own. The main central character, Seron, more so reflects my experience of which a lot of us have had, unfortunately, where you are in that very homophobic environment, that toxic, the only way to put it, toxic environment. And so Seron kind of reflects what the process that I went through of learning that my relationship to God is just that, my relationship to God, a very, very personal thing. No one can inform me of that other than he and I. And as I would, get away from tradition and get away from everything the pastor or the deacon says is law, and God and I have these conversations quite literally. I have those experiences where it's an almost, I'm not crazy, don't send me to the psych ward, but an almost audible conversation with God. And in my different experiences, I have quite literally seen, I can go back to even my high school days, very short story, I was almost like a Paul vision where he's caught up in the seven heavens or whatever. And I am seeing from a heavenly perspective in this big, I'm very visual, very big giant hand. And I can tell I'm up If you can remember, like all my children when they would do the dream sequences and all that, and the screen is kind of cloudy around it, you know. So I'm seeing like the cloudiness, and I'm seeing this finger pointing down at me in high school, like a Barbie dream house. You take the roof off, and you can see the little Eddie. I can see the outfit down to what I was wearing, and I quite literally heard a voice say, "That is my son." And that was like the foundation for me to be able to go back and say, well, the church says that being gay is wrong. I feel that it's wrong. The things that I hear my family say, not even to this day, they still say they don't believe that they knew I was gay. I don't know. But them saying that gay is wrong. And I would always, the only reason I think there was a conflict was because somewhere in there my spirit knew that this is not right. This can't be right. I can't be here. You can't be this God of love and all of this. You can't be this God who has certain expectations of us and then set us up for failure. If gay is wrong, how can you be the creator who made me gay? Doesn't work for me. The more we had that conversation, the more I would have more of those kind of experiences where I looked up and said, okay, stop keeping your sexuality and your spirituality separate. They're not separate. It's a God-given gift. You know, and granted, we will look at how we use our sex drives in different ways, but if you think about it from an anthropological standpoint, that's why we're still here, because we're still popping out babies because we had that sex drive. We even look at the idea that men, especially when we think about it from a dating perspective and thinking more so on the hetero side, but, you know, men will go to work, they will go to school, they will buy the best house, buy the best car to get that woman. You know, it's their sexuality, it's their gift, it's one of the ways they function. And so how can this creator give me that and give it to me flawed when he's supposed to be perfect and expects me to be perfect? So we went through the whole process, and somewhere in there, to be honest, I progressively got to way from a church that was totally homophobic to an experience while still here in Chicago with a still predominantly straight church. Where the pastor and I actually got to be very close because I gave her my first book, and she said, thank you for explaining to me what it feels like to be a gay person in this church. Then I moved across the country to Dallas, and I'm quite literally in a LGBTQ affirming church where from the pastor and his partner on down, everyone is gay or lesbian, and you have some straight people in there and everything. So, you know, I got to a place of self-acceptance, and somewhere in there, you know, I saw where God just led me to where I can go and worship completely and be who I am and acknowledge all those aspects, you know, myself. Sorry I went to preaching, but, you know, it's an important topic for me. I just want that healing prayer for God, to be quite honest.
So then I wonder then what is next as an expression of all of that for us as a community?
I guess my thing is the way I even approach my writing. I'm constantly thinking, yeah, I'm writing from a very specific perspective of a black gay man. But I'm always trying to think of, well, what is the commonality? What is our common experience? If I'm going to sell this book, and let's be fair, all of us that are trying to sell books, we're trying to sell as many of them as we possibly can, despite, you know, our altruistic efforts and the messages and everything we want to get out. And so I'm constantly thinking, well, what will make a straight person want to read this? What will make a white person want to read this? What can they relate to in this story? They can relate to love. They can relate to loss. They can relate to needing divine self-acceptance, you know, and that sort of thing. And so I feel that this idea that the more of us that can reconcile that for ourselves, I feel that we can get to a place where we have that one less division, you know, as far as, you know, oh, all gays are, you know, going to hell kind of thing, or whatever. We can possibly have these places of worship or these other places even outside of, you know, in the secular world, where we can interact as human beings and get off of these labels. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, it's fine for you to be gay and you to be gay. That don't mean we even gonna end up in the same bed. You take it to the level of you're gay and you're straight, just because you're a man and you're cute or whatever, that don't necessarily mean I'm after you, you know, kind of thing. So I feel like if we can especially I feel like religion, unfortunately, especially religion, not spirituality, has been a convenient way to keep people down for the longest. It has been. You think about it with slavery, but even when you look at with homophobia, you know, it's very cute for a person who goes to church every Sunday to say that I don't like you because you're gay because my Bible, my pastor, my God says so, kind of thing. When we get to a place where we're all having our own relationship with God. I even look at, I still read my Bible. I still love God. I still look at it, and I look at where it even says, study to show thyself approved. You're not supposed to be waiting for the pastor to tell you, you know what. So if you're getting into that word, if you're getting into that relationship with God, you can reconcile your own sexuality. You and your straight brother, your gay sister, your trans brother, sister, we can all exist as human beings. And I think that, for me, ultimate, I guess, optimist is very new for me. I think that is the ultimate next step, you know, where we can at least bring that wall down. You know, so I'll try to keep pushing it out in the stories.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you very much. And I want to really thank Eddie for coming back home to Chicago. And I want everyone to give him a round of applause because today's his birthday.